This letter was found tucked inside a worn leather boot, buried beneath 3 feet of French soil near the Somme River. The ink had bled from the rain, but the words somehow survived. If you are reading this, then God was kinder to this paper than he was to me. I write to you now by the light of a single candle, crouched in the belly of a trench that smells of wet earth, burnt wood and something else, something I have no wish to name. The mud here is not like the mud back home. It is not the honest mud of the fields, the kind that clings to your boots after a good rain and washes clean by supper. This mud holds things, it swallows things. I have seen it take a man's boot whole, and the man too frightened to laugh about it. I did not laugh either. It is the 14th of July. I know the date only because Private Callum scratched it into the timber above my head this morning, the way a prisoner marks the wall of his cell. I suppose that is not so different from what we are doing. Waiting, always waiting. The officers tell us the push begins at dawn. They say it with the same flat voice a man uses when he reads from a ledger. Numbers, coordinates, objectives, as if we are not flesh and blood crouching in the dark, but pieces to be moved across a board. I wanted to write sooner. You must know that. I have started this letter 4 times in as many weeks, and each time the words dried up before they could become anything real. What do you say to the people you love most, when the distance between you feels like the whole of the world? What do you say when every sentence might be the last one they ever read in your hand? So I will simply say what is true. I think of home every hour of every day. I think of the kitchen in the early morning, the way the light comes through the east window and falls across the table in long gold bars. I think of Mother's hands, rough and certain and always warm, pressing bread dough into shape with that steady, patient motion I could never quite copy. I tried once, you remember, and she laughed and said I had the hands of a boy who would never go hungry as long as she was standing. I believed her then. I believe her still, though she is an ocean and a lifetime away from this muddy hole in the ground. I think of Father too, though we parted on hard words, and I carry that with me like a stone in my chest. He said I was chasing glory. Maybe he was right. I was 19 and full of something I mistook for courage. I had read the papers. I had heard the speeches in the square, watched the men march with their backs straight and their boots shining, and I felt something rise up in me that I could not sit still against. I wanted to be part of something larger than the fields, larger than the quiet life that stretched before me like a road with no turns. I understand now what Father understood then. There is no glory here. There is only mud and cold and the sound of the man beside you breathing in the dark, and the desperate animal gratitude you feel when you wake and find him still breathing in the morning. His name is Thomas. He is from a small town in Yorkshire, and he has a wife named Eleanor and a daughter not yet 2 years old. He keeps a photograph of them folded inside his breast pocket, over his heart, and he takes it out each evening and stares at it without speaking. I asked him once what the little girl's name was. He said Rose. Just that. One word, and his whole face changed, softened and broke apart at the same time, the way ice does in early spring when the river starts to push through it. I looked away to give him the privacy of it. I have thought often about what it means to be brave. Before I came here, I thought bravery was something loud, a charge, a shout, a flag raised over rubble while the smoke still rises. But I have seen bravery here that no one will ever write about in the papers. I have seen it in the medic who crawled through open fire to reach a boy who was already gone, because he could not bear to leave him alone in the field. I have seen it in the old sergeant who sings soft and low when the shelling starts, so the younger men have something human to hold on to in the noise. I have seen it in Thomas, who is terrified down to his bones every single moment and gets up anyway, every morning, because Eleanor and little Rose are waiting on the other side of this war. And that is enough. That is enough. I wonder sometimes if courage is simply love with nowhere else to go. Tonight the sky is clear, which is a rare thing here. I can see stars between the broken silhouette of the trees along the ridge, and for a moment, just a moment, the war falls away and there is only the sky, enormous and indifferent and achingly beautiful. The same sky you are sleeping under now, though for you it is peaceful and for me it is a clock ticking down toward morning. I tried to find comfort in that we share the same stars, that the sky does not know the difference between here and home. The candle is burning low. Around me the men are quiet now. Some are sleeping, Some are writing, as I am, their faces bent close to paper, their lips moving slightly, as though the words need to be spoken aloud before they can be trusted to ink. Some are simply staring at the wall of the trench, and I do not know what they see in it. Perhaps home, perhaps nothing at all. I have so much more to say, and so little candle left to say it by. So I will save the rest for tomorrow's light, and pray with everything left in me that tomorrow's light still finds me here to write it. The candle I promised to write by never came. They moved us before dawn, quietly, the way you move through a house when someone is sleeping and you do not wish to wake them. Single file through the communication trench, boots wrapped in cloth to muffle the sound against the duckboards. No one spoke. The officers had said everything there was to say the night before, and now there was nothing left but the doing of it. I kept my eyes on the back of the man ahead of me, the worn collar of his coat, the mud caked along the seam of his shoulder, and I walked, and I breathed, and I tried not to think about what waited on the other side of the parapet. The world before a battle has a particular quality that I cannot fully explain to someone who has not stood inside it. Everything becomes unbearably sharp. The cold air against your face feels like a blade. The smell of damp earth and gun oil and unwashed men becomes almost overwhelming. You notice things you would never notice in ordinary life, the way frost sits along the top edge of a wooden beam, the sound your own heartbeat makes when there is nothing else loud enough to cover it. Your body knows before your mind admits it, your hands know, your stomach knows. Some deep animal part of you that existed long before language or reason or country or king knows exactly what is coming, and it wants to run, and you hold it still with everything you have, and you call that soldiering. Thomas was just behind me in the line. I could hear him breathing, shallow and quick, the way a man breathes when he is trying to take up as little space in the world as possible, as though by making himself smaller, he might somehow slip past whatever is coming. I wanted to say something to him, something real, something that would mean something if it turned out to be the last thing either of us ever heard. But the words would not come, and the line was moving, and so I reached back and pressed my hand briefly against his arm, and he pressed back, and that was enough. That was everything. We reached our position as the sky was just beginning to lighten in the east, not quite dawn, but that grey, uncertain hour before it, when the darkness has given up, but the light has not yet committed. The officers moved along the line with their watches out, checking and rechecking, their faces carefully arranged into expressions of calm that did not reach their eyes. I watched one of them, a young lieutenant, younger than me, with a thin blonde moustache he was clearly still growing into, and I saw his lips moving silently, and I thought he might be praying, and then I looked closer, and I realized he was counting, just counting. Numbers without end, because counting is something the mind can hold on to when everything else has become too large and too terrible. I understood him completely. I thought of you then, all of you, not as a single image, but as a flood of them, one after another, the way they come in dreams, mother turning from the window, father's hands on the handle of the plough, the knuckles broad and weathered, my sister's laugh, the one she tries to hide behind her hand because she thinks it sounds unladylike, though it is the most joyful sound I have ever heard in my life, the smell of Sunday dinner drifting through the whole house, the creak of the third step on the staircase that we all knew to skip on Christmas morning so as not to wake the younger ones too soon. Small things, ordinary things. The kind of things you do not know are the whole of your life until you are standing in a trench with a rifle in your hands and the sky going pale above enemy wire, and you understand with sudden, devastating clarity that ordinary was everything, that ordinary was the whole treasure, and you spent it without counting. I would give anything to sit at that table again, to eat whatever was put in front of me without tasting it, and complain about the cold coming through the kitchen window, and argue with father about nothing of importance, and fall asleep in my own bed, under my own roof, with the sound of the house settling around me in the dark. I would give every remaining day I have left, just for one of those thoughtless, ordinary evenings that I let slide through my hands like water, never once stopping to feel how warm it was. The waiting is the worst of it. I have said that before, I know, but it becomes more true each time. In the action itself, I am told by men who have been over the top before, men whose eyes carry distances in them that have nothing to do with this field. In the action itself, the fear changes into something else, something faster and narrower, almost clean. There is no room for thought. The body takes over, and you are reduced to motion and instinct, and the next step and the next breath, and the man beside you. The fear does not go away, but it stops being abstract. It stops being about everything, and becomes only about this moment and this ground and this breath. But in the waiting, there is too much room for thought. I have been thinking about the summer I was 12 years old and Father took me to the river to fish before the harvest. We were up before the sun, just the two of us, and we walked through the fields in the dark without speaking, and I remember the dew soaking through my boots and not caring, because I was with him and the world was quiet and the day had not yet made any demands of us. We caught nothing, as I recall. We sat on the bank for 3 hours with our lines in the water and caught not a single thing, and Father said on the walk home, perfectly serious, that it had been one of the finest mornings of his life. I thought he was joking. I laughed. He did not laugh. I understand now, Father. I understand what you meant. I am sorry it took me so long. The lieutenant has stopped counting. He is looking at his watch with an expression of absolute stillness, the way a man looks at something he cannot change and has decided to stop fighting. Around me I can hear the small sounds of men making their final preparations, the soft metallic click of weapons being checked, the rustle of men shifting their weight, a cough quickly muffled, a whispered word in a language I do not recognize from somewhere down the line. Somewhere, faintly, someone is crying, and no one is remarking upon it, because there is nothing to remark. We are all of us, in our own way, doing the same thing. Thomas has taken out his photograph. He is not looking at it the way he usually does, that long, private stare, the one I always look away from. He is holding it flat against his chest, beneath his hand, his eyes closed, and his lips are moving. And I find I cannot watch that either, because it is too much of what all of us are carrying, held there in one man's 2 hands over his heart. The sky is fully grey now. The light is coming, whether we are ready for it or not. The lieutenant raises his whistle, and I find I am thinking of you, only you, as clearly and completely as I have ever thought of anything in my life. The way you think of something you love, when you suddenly understand what love actually costs, what it has always cost, and you realize you would pay it again without hesitation, every single time, because the alternative is to have never known it at all. I want you to know that. Whatever comes next, whatever this morning decides about me, I want you to know that I would choose this life again. Every hard part of it, every ordinary evening I did not appreciate, and every word left unsaid, and every morning I woke up and did not think to be grateful. I would choose all of it again, because all of it led here, to this moment, to me thinking of your faces in the grey light before dawn, and feeling even here, even now, something that can only be called grateful. The whistle has not yet blown, but the lieutenant's hand is rising, and I am holding your names in my mouth like a prayer, like a compass, like the only true north I have ever known. The following pages were found separated from the first, waterlogged and pressed flat beneath a tin of rifle oil. The handwriting changes here, slower, heavier, as though each word cost the writer something to set down. I do not know how much time has passed. Time moves differently after. That is the only way I can explain it. Before the whistle, time was a terrible weight, thick and slow and pressing down on everything. After it became something else entirely, something that did not behave like time at all. There were moments that stretched so wide I felt I could have lived an entire life inside them. And there were hours that vanished so completely I could not account for them even seconds after they were gone. I am not sure the word time means anything anymore. I am not sure many words mean what they used to. I will try to tell you what I can. The whistle blew at 6 minutes past 5. I know this because I looked at my watch in the final second before it happened. I do not know why. Some instinct toward record-keeping, toward fixing the moment in something precise and knowable. And the hands read 6 minutes past 5, and then the sound split the air and the world cracked open and we went over. I cannot tell you what it looked like. Not because I do not remember, but because there are no words in any language I know that were built to carry what I saw. Language was made for other things, for love letters and ledgers and Sunday sermons and the names of children. It was not made for this. Whatever I gave you in words would be smaller than the truth, and I would rather give you silence than a lie dressed up as description. What I can tell you is what I felt. I felt the ground beneath my boots, uneven and torn, and I remember being absurdly focused on not falling, as though falling was the great danger. as though the earth itself was the enemy, and not the air shrieking with metal above it. I felt the cold in my lungs with every breath, sharp and clean and almost medicinal. I felt, and this I cannot explain, a terrible sudden calm. Not peace, not courage, something more primitive than either, a narrowing. The whole world reduced to the next step, and the next, and the man to my left, and the ground in front of me, and nothing else existing anywhere. I called out for Thomas at some point. I do not know when. I heard my own voice as though it belonged to someone else, shouting his name into noise so enormous it swallowed the sound before it could travel 3 feet. I do not know if he heard me. I do not know. I cannot let myself finish that sentence. Not yet, not here. There was a moment, one single moment, when the noise stopped. Not truly stopped. I understand now that it did not truly stop. But there was a second, or perhaps less than a second, in which my mind stepped back from the chaos the way a man steps back from a fire that has grown too large. And in that fraction of silence I saw the field whole, the way you see a painting when you step back from it far enough to understand what it is. And what I saw, what I will carry inside me for whatever time remains to me on this earth, was simply this. Men, just men. On both sides of the wire, in the mud, in the noise and the smoke and the impossible morning light, just men. Young men, most of them, boys, some of them, with photographs in their breast pockets and names for their children and kitchen tables they were trying to find their way back to. Men who had learned to walk in some small town I would never visit, who had been held as infants by mothers who loved them without condition, who had once caught nothing at a river and called it the finest morning of their lives. Men exactly like me, trying to cross a field for reasons that had been explained to them by other men in rooms far from this mud, and dying for it, and I could not in that moment, I could not find the sense in it. I am not saying this as protest. I am not a political man. I do not have the education for large arguments about nations and histories and the machinery of war. I am only telling you what I saw in that fraction of silence, what my eyes reported to me plainly before the noise closed back in and the narrowing returned, and I was once again only boots and breath, and the next step. I was hit sometime after that. I do not say this to frighten you. I say it because I promised you truth, and I will not stop now. It was my left side, below the ribs, and the honest report of it is that I did not feel it immediately. Not pain, not at first, only a kind of pressure, a sudden heaviness, as though someone had pressed a firm hand against my side and was leaning their weight into it. I kept moving for longer than I should have. The body is remarkable in what it will do when the mind has not yet been given the information. When I finally went down, it was not dramatic. There was no great falling. I simply found myself on the ground, on my back, looking up at the sky, and the sky was the same sky I had looked at the night before from the trench, enormous and pale and entirely indifferent to everything happening beneath it, and I thought, with perfect clarity, so this is where it ends. But it did not end. I do not know who pulled me back. In the confusion and the noise and the smoke I could not see a face, only hands, strong hands, certain hands, grabbing the collar of my coat and dragging me backward across the broken ground with a determination that felt almost angry, as though death itself was being argued with. I was taken to the aid station. I was given what could be given. I am writing this from a cot in a barn that smells of hay and carbolic acid, and the man in the next cot is sleeping, and outside the guns are quiet for the first time in longer than I can remember, and the quiet is so unfamiliar, it is almost frightening. I think about what it means to have survived when others did not. I turn it over and over in my hands like a stone I cannot put down. There is guilt in it, a deep, wordless guilt that I do not think will ever fully leave me. Why this body and not another? Why this coat grabbed and not the one beside it? I have no answer. I do not believe there is one. And perhaps that is the hardest thing of all, not the pain, not the fear, not even the things I have seen, but the absolute silent randomness of it, the absence of meaning in the choosing. Thomas survived. I learned this today, and I wept in a way I have not wept since I was a child, openly, without shame, with my whole chest in it, because some debts cannot be paid in any currency but tears. He is 2 rows over. He has not yet been able to speak much, but this morning he held up 2 fingers toward me across the distance of the barn, and I held up 2 fingers back, and we stayed like that for a long moment, and it meant everything. It meant, We are still here. It meant Rose still has a father. It meant Eleanor's letter will be answered. I am writing to you now because I do not know what comes next, and I have learned at a cost I would not wish on any man, that the things left unsaid do not wait patiently for a better moment. They do not sit quietly in the hall while you gather your courage. They go. They go with the person you meant to say them to, or they stay behind inside you like splinters, working deeper with every year, and either way you carry the weight of having let the moment pass. So I will not let this moment pass. I love you, each of you, entirely, without reservation, in ways I have never been adequate enough with words to express. I love you with the part of me that survived this field when it had no particular right to. And I love you with the part of me that lay on its back in the mud and looked at the sky and thought your names before it thought anything else. I love you with the memory of every ordinary evening I did not appreciate, and with the full, aching knowledge of what ordinary is worth, which is everything, which is the whole world, which is more than all the glory that was ever promised in any square in any city by any man with a fine coat and no intention of standing where I have stood. Come home to each other. Whatever distances have grown between you and I know they have, because distance grows between people the way weeds grow in an untended garden. Quietly and without announcement, come home to each other. Sit at the table, eat the meal, laugh at the things worth laughing at. Let father be right sometimes, even when he is wrong. Let the argument go. Mend what can be mended while the person is still in the room and not in a barn somewhere in France, wondering if he remembered to say the things that mattered. I do not know when I will be well enough to be moved. I do not know what comes after that. The wound is serious, I will not deceive you, and the doctors speak to me in the careful, measured tones that men use when they are managing someone's hope, rather than reporting honestly to it. I understand what that means. I have made my peace with what that means, or I am trying to, in the slow hours of this strange, quiet barn, while the man beside me sleeps, and the guns outside stay silent, and the hay shifts in the draught from the broken wall, and the candle burns down low. If this letter reaches you before I do, if this letter reaches you and I do not, know that the last clear thought I had on that field, before the ground came up to meet me, was not of fear, and not of pain, and not of all the things left undone. It was your faces, just your faces, in the morning light, the way I have always known them, not in any particular moment, but in all of them at once, the whole accumulation of a life lived together, pressed into a single image as clear and warm and certain as the sun coming through the east window and falling across the kitchen table in long gold bars. I carried you across that field. I carry you still. And if there is anything waiting on the other side of whatever comes next, any thread of me that continues in some form beyond the reach of French mud and field surgeons and the careful voices of men managing hope, it will be walking toward that kitchen. It will be reaching for that door. The letter ends here. The final page, if there was one, was never found.